Hey folks, and welcome to this week's Weaver's Woodshop, where this week I'm going to be making 5 charcuterie boards or serving trays or pizza boards or whatever you want to call them. They're called a whole bunch of different things. But before we get started, I want to point out that shirt that I'm wearing right there. That shirt I got from the University High School weightlifting team. The weightlifting team is coached by Coach Justin Roberts. He has done a phenomenal job with both the boys and girls weightlifting team since he's been there. And last year, the boys team placed second in the state championships. They were state runners up. They had a state champion, and they had, I believe, 4 other state placers. So way to go, Coach Roberts and the University High School weightlifting team. You guys have done a jam-up job. So congrats to you guys. So now back to what I'm doing here. These charcuterie boards are made from Paduke, I believe is the proper way to say it, and we're going to use hard maple as well. The customer, he didn't really have much of a design idea other than pointing to one of the other boards that I did and said, I like that design that you did, and I like the design that kind of looks like an old school paddle with a handle on it. Other than that, he let me do kind of what I want. So that's what I'm doing right here, is cutting out the handle for it. You can see kind of the handle taking shape there. It's kind of neat having somebody giving you a little bit of freedom on what you want to do. But I definitely came up with 5 different ideas on how to blend these things together. So stick around, and I'll cut in as I need to here. And what you see me doing there, kind of going back and forth on the bandsaw, is I've got to make some long cuts. It's kind of the angle of the dangle, getting the bandsaw where I need it to. It's those of you that have a bandsaw, it's kind of easier to get those long cuts when you go little short cuts perpendicular to the line that you're trying to get. And on this handle right here, you'll see I'm kind of doing a curved handle there. So I got out the old jigsaw, and believe I end up getting out the router as well, and making that cut that I got there. Trying to smooth it out there. I put a sanding bit on the drill press, and just trying to get that handle curved out the best that I can, and never done a handle like that before, so I was just doing the best I can. And what you see me doing here is part of the weave process, which I did in one of the boards, which I'll actually do a video later on the weave process. It's pretty interesting. It's very time consuming, but I'll do a video later on that process. And now you gotta wonder, why am I showing this video with my back towards the camera? Well, it's because it's in one of the boards here. I'm trying to show you what I'm doing. I cut the handle right off that sucker. That's what I did right there. Because I'm gonna cut it down the middle, and I'm gonna put some thick maple right down the middle, and it's gonna end up being part of the handle. So that's what I did. I cut the handle off that I'd already made, because like I said, I couldn't just make the guy 5 of the same boards. So I'd already put a handle on that board. I cut it off, and it wasn't my original plan, but honestly I didn't like the way the handle came out. So I cut the handle off, and now you just saw me, I cut it right down the middle, and now I'm gonna make a thick piece of maple and go right down the middle with it, and that's gonna be the handle. All right, now it's time to glue that thick maple handle, like I said, right down the middle of that thing. We haven't cut it up and carved out the handle yet, but it looks like we got that thick piece of maple all glued up and ready to go. So that's what I'm doing now, and I'm getting ready to clamp it up, and it'll dry while I'm working on some other stuff. Okay, and now it's time to get some glue on some of the woven board and let it dry. And while that's drying, I'm moving some of the other boards over to the spindle sander so I can start working on the handle area of those. That little spindle sander, it's come in pretty dang handy. I just recently got it, and the review of that, if anyone is interested in a spindle sander is here on the channel. If so, go ahead and look it up and click on that link. If I knew how to attach the link here, I'd be pointing and say click on it there, but I don't know how to do that yet. So anyways, that's what I'm doing while those other two glue ups are drying. All right, now that the boards are pretty much done, and pretty much all of them have been sanded to 80 grit. Some of them I'm still waiting to dry a little bit, so that's why you don't see all 5 of them down there. But they will dry on this, same day here, just a little bit later. I'm going to go ahead and soften the edges up with the router, and then once they're routed, I'll go ahead and burn the logo in them and sand them to 120, and then I'll sand it to 220, and then I'll go ahead and put my Odie's oil on. All right, and it's logo time, so that's what we're doing. The customer wanted the logo right in the middle on the top, so he could see this pretty mug every time he lays it out. So that's what I'm doing here. I've started with hardwoods, holding it down on there for about 15 seconds. And then after I do the logo, and once it cools, obviously, I do go ahead and sand it with 120. And that allows me, a lot of times, I think as the smoke escapes, it kind of singes the wood around it a little bit. So when I sand it with the sandpaper, you can kind of see right there, it's kind of golden around it. It will help clean it up a little bit. And I run them through the drum sander, which also has 120 on it. What then most of the time I still go ahead and hit it with the orbital sander as well. And then after that, I'll do the orbital sander with 220. And then, like I said, once I clean it off, I'll go ahead and do the Odie's oil and we'll be good to go. All right, now that I got everything sanded down with the orbital, that orbital can't get into all the nooks and crannies and rounded corners. So that's what I'm doing here, sanding it by hand just so I can get in all those nooks and crannies and rounded corners. Um, so, that's a good and bad thing. The nooks and crannies and rounded corners look good, but it sure will make your fingers cramp up. So that's what I'm doing here. So now that we got everything sanded down to 220, I'm wiping it off with some alcohol. And what the alcohol does is it gets any dust and dirt and debris and anything else off of this wood, and it's just gonna help. Whether you're putting oil on it like I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use Odie's oil, or whether you were gonna paint it or stain it or lacquer, anything. You want to get it as clean as you can before you go putting the finish on there. So that's what I'm doing. You can even see the rags getting a little bit of a red tint to it. The red tint's coming from that paduk. Always clean it before you put whatever kind of finish on it. And if you guys are enjoying this or learning anything from it or whatever, please go ahead, like, subscribe, share, comment, all that kind of stuff. So thank you. And I tell you, I like me some Odie's oil, man. It really does a phenomenal job. It's food safe. You see how it brings that color out too. You leave it on there for 30 minutes or so, and it just wipes right off. They say do not leave it on there for long because it's a pain in the booty to get off. I've never tried that myself, and I don't want to, so I'm gonna believe them on that. But you use that white cloth in order to wipe it off. And you can see when that cloth gets too oily and you move on. So here's the finished product. I think they all came out pretty dang good. So thank you for watching this week's Weaver's Woodshop, and we will see you next time.